Today I'm going to talk about the T0 tail, which I've had for about 10 months. I purchased it from John Fisher at Eco-Lite a little bit before the Ultra Skate in 2023 in Miami. I was looking for a 0-degree tail that would complement my Wiggler longboard, which I like a lot, but it has a very long wheelbase, and at my weight, with the what I would call the gold standard torsion tail, the TTX from GBomb, it was just a little too long for this particular deck and my weight if I wanted to use the full wheelbase of the deck. And so I was bottoming it out quite a bit. Might be able to see a little bit of evidence of that on the GBomb. And I thought I would give this other tail a try. Sight unseen, and anytime you order something on the internet without much history, you're always taking a little bit of a chance. But I figured I would see John at Ultra Skate, which I did, and he delivered the tail to me. And I put it on, and it pretty much has been on this deck since then. I have put about 1,000 miles, I would estimate, maybe a bit more, on this combination of the Wiggler deck with the T0 tail, and I've been quite pleased with it, and I thought other people might be interested in my impressions. I am not by any means an elite rider. I'm a middle of the pack distance skater who does it for fitness and fun, but I think there's a lot of flexibility and options with this tail that I thought might apply to others. So I thought of 3 use cases one might choose the T0 over the TTX, or in addition to the TTX. One would be cost. I know it's about $100 cheaper, I think, currently than the TTX. That may change day to day, and I think actually the TTX has dropped in price since I purchased it. The T0 is a very simple design. It's a piece of aluminum with an axle through it, single pivot point, and then bushings on either side of it with a little metal cylinder, I think sort of protecting the bushing, and then some plastic spacers on the side. Unlike the TTX, it requires 2 skate tools to take apart. So that's a little bit of a consideration if you're skating long distances and you want to make an adjustment on the fly, which I typically don't do. What I like about it is that with the TTX, it requires a flathead screwdriver, and the metal on the axle just seems a little bit delicate and easy to strip, which I've done a little bit of. Not a big deal, but all things being equal, this is a pretty simple design. 2 skate tools, and you're able to take it off pretty easily. And then adjustments are pretty easy. This has the crank, I think they're fat cone bushings in gray. And then when I purchased it, it had like a wine red bushing that was slightly softer. With the crank bushings, you can tighten it up a little bit to get a bit more rebound. I have the gray set pretty loose right now, and previously I had the red wine ones cranked down a little bit. To me, it gives a similar sort of feeling. High speed pumping is what I'm more interested in out of this tail, although you can set it up for a little more carvy, surfy feel if you'd like. I think John is trying to come up with nomenclature for this type of tail. It's not a torsion tail, since there's only one arm essentially of aluminum, and that shouldn't be twisting. Any pivoting happens at the axle interface with this piece of aluminum, and then the bushings sort of provide that rebound. So it's really more of a pivot than torsion, although when you have a deck this long, I wonder if there isn't a little bit of torsion of the deck itself, but perhaps not. Maybe there's enough twisting out of the bushings that that'll absorb any of that stress before it hits the deck. In any event, I'm not an engineer. I don't quite understand all of the physics involved, but I will say it's been a simple, pretty foolproof tail. So I started mentioning the use cases. For me, number one use case was I wanted a tail that would use all of the wiggler deck without having to chop it. I'm sure it could be cut and actually make it a pretty similar performing setup, but I just didn't want to fiddle with that. And I thought, especially in this cottage industry of distance longboarding, it was fun to support a new entrant in the field of tails. I think since this has come out, there may be a couple other options from the Far East, which I don't have any experience with, but they look pretty similar in how they perform. But I thought this was a very solid option to utilize all of the deck. So if cost is a consideration, that would be another reason to perhaps choose the T0. And the third one would be is if you already have a lot of gear. Let's say you already have a TTX, you want to try something different. I think it's a good complement to other options on the market. I would absolutely buy it again. Am I going to get rid of my TTX from GBomb? No, I love that thing, and I'll continue to use it. Actually, I'm sitting on a deck that has it on it, and I'll continue to use it. And I think it's probably the more versatile option in terms of having spherical bearings and the bushing combinations. You can play around to your heart's content. That's not to say there's not a lot of optionality and ability to tinker with the T0, because I think there absolutely is. You can find videos of how easy it is to replace the bushings, particularly the little center core bushing that pops out pretty easily. And John includes a bolt to help facilitate that. And I did that a few weeks ago, and it was pretty easy. So 10 months in, the only maintenance I've done is replacing that central core and replacing the bushings. I don't know if it needed it. It was starting to get a little bit loose with the axle through that core bushing. When I say loose, I mean still, I didn't feel any sloppiness, but you could push the axle rather easily through that central core, and I figured, why not get ahead of it? Other than that, not much to go wrong with it that I can see, unless the metal fails. But it's been reliable, easy, not much negative, if anything, to say about it. I just say it's competing against some very good options, such as the TTX. And if price were no consideration, it'd be hard to say this is superior to that. But I think it's a very good choice, and I'd recommend checking it out. Lastly, I wanted to show a little bit of the differences between the TTX and the T0. I alluded to it, but I didn't actually give any details. But the reason that the T0 doesn't bottom out my wiggler is it's quite a bit shorter than the TTX. The TTX, I think I measured this morning around 13 plus centimeters, and the T0 is 8 centimeters measured from the back bolt to the middle of the axle. I could be off slightly with the numbers, but I think that's pretty close. So you can see, with the T0, it's a shorter distance, and how that manifests itself with the wiggler is it's a little bit shorter wheelbase than it would have been with the TTX, and so it doesn't bottom out. So that is one major difference. You can see otherwise with the TTX, you've got the two arms, which are what leads to the torsion, and then separated by a central bushing if you choose to use it. and then I have outer bushings. This is an all bushing combo, although you can set it up with sphericals or sphericals and bushings. With the T0, you can see the centerpiece of aluminum. These are the two crank bushings. These are the dark or the gray. I have a red line one, which is slightly softer. And then you can't see it in there, but there's a central metal axle, which provides some support, and a washer, and then plastic spacers on either side. And then inside the T0 is a core riptide bushing that's somewhat compressed, and that provides a pretty snug fit with the axle. So that's it. That's my overview. If you had any experience with the T0 that you wanted to share, I'd love to hear it. If you wanted to provide some thoughts on the comparison or let me know things I might have missed, I'm happy to hear that too. Maybe if we're lucky, John Fisher might pipe in with any comments or critiques he might have, or fill in any holes of things I might have forgotten to mention. Thanks for watching.